whatever reason on this earth, it feels like the biggest fear in mankind is saying the words "I'm sorry" or admitting that you made a mistake, which is really fascinating, I think. And I've always really valued friendships that have that ability to have that conflict and resolve, and I think that such a root of that is the ability to be like, I that up.
This is what I love about Twinless. There's so much humor, there's so much heart, there's so much tenderness, and it all stems around grief for me, and I love that. But before we get into that deep discussion, I need to know, are either one of y'all twins? Do you do you know what your fascination with twins is? And where did you find all them twins on the street, James? I know I made you laugh, right? Yes, mission accomplished.
I'm tragically not a twin. We did have flyers. Incidentally, I was coming back from the location scout for the twins, the frequency illusion sequence, where I see twins everywhere. It was like, I think, a Sunday with my cinematographer Greg, and we parked at the house, the Airbnb where we were staying, and I'm like, wait, are those twins? And I get out of the car. I'm like, excuse me. Are you two twins? They're like, yeah. I'm like, this is weird, but would you want to be in a movie? And actually, they were aware already of because they had seen the flyers, and one of them was very eager to do it. The other one's like, I've got work. But he twisted his arm, and now they're in the movie as the Cookie Twins. So, but to answer your first question, tragically, no, I am not a twin. I've been waiting one day to run into my long lost twin, but I'm still patiently waiting. I did date an identical twin, and I wrote the first draft of this shortly after he broke up with me.
Wait, what? Okay, you've got jokes. Dylan, are you a twin?
No.
He's like, I'll just give you a simple answer to that, no. I cannot with y'all. Y'all are killing me. Okay.
It just answered the question.
Okay, you know what, Dylan? Okay, so me and Dylan go way back. It's a situation. I'm just saying. So I'm just gonna bring it to you, Dylan, since you're messing with me. I've seen Dylan, and I said this to him before we came down here. I have seen Dylan in a multitude of different roles, ranging anywhere from comedy to like a noir type of thing, and now this. And the range that you exude in cinema is absolutely fantabulous, and I would be remiss in not acknowledging that to your face.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So, having said that, Roman is a perfect example for me of how grief affects a family, how it affects kids, how it affects all those around them. And you and Lauren in those scenes, your sparring partner, is just really beautiful to watch the way you guys go at each other, for lack of a better way to say it. But how do you prepare to do those types of scenes and then prepare to do duality roles, because you're playing two different people, not just one person?
Yeah, well, I think so much of it is in the specificity in the script, you know. I think I really connected to the idea that, you know, here's this mother and son deeply in grief and not able to communicate with one another, and if anything, really sort of falling back to how they've always communicated with one another, which I think I can just, it really resonated me from the first time that I read the script. I remember that scene with Lauren and I, you know, by the time we shot it, was one of the things that hadn't changed at all in 4 years that we were trying to make it. And it was one of that kind of connectivity things that I remember was my first way into the character and the language and the tone of the film, and I just felt like it was so authentically executed. I knew that argument, you know, I know that sort of lapse of communication, and I know that with my family, and it just felt so specific and authentic, and you know, it was that type of groundwork that I felt was really just like such a powerful and human, again, sort of foundation for this comedy, you know, which I felt like was such a powerful combo, you know, sort of contrasting each other, but was also something I felt that I really understood very well in my own life.
Did you all improv to get into those scenes, to get up to that intensity, or did James just go action and y'all went for it?
Well, so there's two. The beginning one on the phone is very scripted, but obviously it's overlapping, so there's certainly some, you know, looseness around it, you know, repetition, things like that, but it's a very scripted scene. And then when you see us arguing in the kitchen later on, we decided to totally just do a half an hour of fighting, basically, and then James picked kind of the, you know, one 9 seconds where there's sort of, yeah. There were so many options at one point in the edit. He sent me about 5 options, you know, of us fighting, in each like 8-second clips with them playing Jenga in the foreground.
Well, I just want to flip back to what you said. It took y'all 4 years to get this film made?
From when I was attached, yeah.
I wrote the first draft in 2015, so it's been a 10-year journey for me.
Wow. So from 2015 to now, what changed? How did you actually get it on its feet?
Do we have time for this?
How long is the,
Yes, we
how long
have
is the
time.
Q&A? You guys got to go home?
We have
or?
time.
What I will say is the last time I was at this theater was in my first film, Straight Up, premiered. Thank you. Had its LA theatrical premiere at what was the AMC Sunset 5 on March 6, 2020. That's the reaction I was looking for.
You better know the date.
I looked it up right before the screening. And we were in the smaller room, so this feels slightly like an upgrade. And I had met my producer, David Permit, off the heels of Straight Up premiering at Outfest. And to answer your question, like what changed, one of the big things that I took from my first film, Straight Up, was the dual protagonist nature. So one of the major revisions was switching perspectives with the title sequence drop. It was originally told entirely from Dennis's perspective, but for a few reasons, partially having to relieve some of the stress of having to be able to share the billing with a more experienced, wonderful actor was helpful for me. But also I think it was a way into the story that rooted you from Roman's perspective, and then you're seeing Dennis through his lens. I think it helps in garnering that empathy that we're so careful of tracking throughout the film, and setting that relationship so you're invested, and that by the time the climax happens, you're both rooting for and against the consequences of his actions. So for me, writing is rewriting. You know, it's never really finished. You kind of just have to let it go. But yeah, it went through various permutations. But I'd say the DNA and the thematics and tonal fluctuations of the script were present in the first draft. It just took a lot of sculpting over a decade.
I just want to say this. This is the second film that I've seen this year that revolves around support groups and people being in support groups. The first one hasn't come out yet, so you guys got to go see that one as well as this and tell your friends about this one. Eleanor the Great is Scarlett Johansson's directorial debut. And in that film, June Squibb joins a support group of Holocaust survivors, of which she is not, because she's grieving for her friend, and she doesn't know how to tell these people that she's not. She basically takes on her friend's personality. So having said that, I want to talk a little bit about grief and the form that it comes in this particular film. Have either of you used your grief that you've had at any point in your life to inform how you created this project, James, and how you created your characters, Dylan? Because is such a powerful film from that perspective. It really, really, really is. And it shows grief in so many different incantations. So did grief inform you going into this, or was it just a twin thing going into it, James?
I'd say the genesis of the project started when I unearthed the concept of a twin bereavement support group, which I had found to be such a unique and specific loss that I felt like had such a potent way to explore themes of identity, because for twins, it's also such a loss of self. Mm-hmm. So I'm reticent to say that I brought any grief to that's comparable, because I don't think there is something totally comparable to that version of grief. I'd say my access point, I experience grief in my own life in ways that we all do. I find that when I'm writing, there's universality and specificity. So for me, I'm trying to bring personal experience, mixing it with research as well as imagination. And for me, that's sort of how I approach my writing process.
Okay, well said. Okay, I'm gonna lighten up for a minute. These marshmallows, that marshmallow scene where y'all shoveling those marshmallows in your mouth. How many times did you do that? How many marshmallows did you shove in your mouth? And do you ever want to see a marshmallow again? Or do you find yourself being the type of person that there's not a marshmallow that you never liked?
Yeah, I hate that game. I was always a kid who really struggled at the dentist growing up. I have a very sensitive gag reflex.
Oh.
I know. I don't know why that silenced the crowd. So
They're disappointed.
When I'm oh, it's a bummer. So me spitting out the, is real. Yeah.
He's like, and that's all I have to say about that. James, what was up is, why the marshmallows though? Yeah. Like, why the marshmallows? Why not, like some Raisinets or something? Why marshmallows?
Well, I felt Chubby Bunny as well as the Pop-Tarts and the Sims. These were all cultural touchstones that brought Roman back to his childhood, an era where he was closest with his late brother Rocky. So these were supposed to be themes of nostalgia and reconstruction, where I wouldn't necessarily equate Dennis to being a surrogate or replacement, but I think Roman is in his healing process trying to find ways to make amends and make up for lost time. So I felt these were sort of natural ways for him to, I guess, try to relive some of the purity and joy of the times when he was happiest in his life.
Yeah, we were told recently that it's a millennial coded movie. And it really is, yeah.
Okay, well, there you have it. I know I got jokes. Leave me alone. So I want to talk a little bit about the lying that happens in the film, because that was something that stuck out to me as well. Dennis telling this lie that he didn't mean any harm, but it caused harm and foul nonetheless. And lying can literally destroy families, it destroys relationships, it can tear people apart. And I love how, in that context, the film speaks to forgiveness in some of the most subtle terms possible, with the two of you at the end, just simply having a sandwich the same way you started. That was really, really beautiful. So having said that, what would it take for you to forgive someone that you feel has irreparably lied to you, and you just feel some kind of way about it, but that person has made an indelible mark in your life that you don't want to let them go?
I mean, we talk about this type of thing outside of the context of the film too, just often. The concept of forgiveness in relationships, and I guess how you approach intimacy in your friendships and your relationships, and what you value in terms of like foundation of trust. And We talk about like accountability a lot. You know, it's like a big thing that we each in our personal lives speak about as being like highly valuable to us in like relationships. And you know, for whatever reason on this earth, it feels like the biggest fear in mankind is saying the words "I'm sorry" or admitting that you made a mistake, which is really fascinating, I think. And I've always really valued friendships that you know have that ability to have that conflict and resolve. And I think that such a root of that is the ability to be like, I fucked that up, you know, and for whatever reason that is so rare for people to be able to face and confront. So yeah, I don't know, as it relates to the film, we've had also so many conversations, and it's been so interesting to hear responses as well, like informing, you know, your own relationships to forgiveness as, you know, by how you kind of receive the ending, you know, or what your outlook is on the ending, you know. Do you have hope for these guys, you know? How do you perceive it? When you start seeing Roman kind of open back up in that last scene and take the bite of the sandwich, and they kind of start falling back into that comfort that they discovered with each other, you know? I mean, for me, it's really, you know, I have my own feelings for sure, but one of the really interesting and gratifying things I think about finally sharing the movie is hearing all of those types of thoughts about the ending. And yeah, and it's a wide array for sure of feelings. I mean, there's been, you know, I've heard from people who are like really angry about it and are like, no fucking way, you know. Would I ever fucking forgive that motherfucker? And I'm like, that's one guy clearly who I'm like, you know, quoting. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. He'd be dead to me. You know, I'm like, all right. But, you know, it's interesting that a person felt that way, you know. And, yeah, I think there is so much room for forgiveness there. I think that's the beautiful thing about intimacy in friendships and relationships in general. I think you have to sort of have things like that to deepen those relationships. Now, this is a real interesting example of that, obviously, and but I just think as a concept, it's really something I think about in my life all the time, you know.
Before you answer, James, I want to talk to you, since you brought it up, the ending. The ending is like open to interpretation. You can make it feel or be anything that you want it to be. Was that intentional, or did you struggle to have the ending be different things at various points of the creation of this film?
I'd say the ending was absolutely something that we were charting and tracking throughout the revision process, and wanting to make sure that it felt earned and satisfying, even if not resolved. I'd say my favorite types of films hold up a mirror that you reflect your own personal experiences of them. So I really do believe that audiences' reactions to the ending, or how they interpret where the relationship goes from here, will really be tied to their own personal relationship to forgiveness. I, like Dylan, have my own feelings about where Dennis and Roman go from there, but I think it's also speaking to this idea, to your point, Dylan, of which I think is also what appeals to so much about twinship to Dennis, is this idea of unconditional love. And will somebody love you if you fuck up? So I think that's really the core of it. I think that's why we are, as humans, so afraid of taking accountability, of saying I'm sorry, because we fear being rejected. Even if I show up and say I'm sorry, that won't be enough. And so I think forgiveness is, to me, one of the most powerful acts that makes us so deeply human. And it is just as much for the forgiver as it is for the forgiven.
Thank you for that. That was beautiful. I want to talk a little bit about the casting of Marcy, because she was freaking awesome. Amazing. And I don't want to butcher her name. Yes, please. I don't want to butcher her name because I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it.
Aisling Franciosi.
Yeah, so I'm not going to pronounce it because I don't want to mess it up. But I want to talk about the casting of her. Was it difficult to find somebody for that role? Because that particular character has to encompass so many different emotions. She has to be stern, she has to be funny, she has to be quirky, she has to be all these different things in one human being, and that's kind of hard to find in one actress sometimes.
Dylan's laughing because
I
that
know.
was the hardest role to cast, and it caused us. Speaking of conflict, yes,
I mean,
I think
she's the linchpin
yeah,
of the film.
100%.
In so many ways.
Marcy's my personal favorite character. I, for me, what made the role so difficult to cast is we were looking for an actress who naturally possessed a guilelessness that when you see her through Dennis's perspective, which is how we're initially introduced to her, that you sort of write her off. But then we slowly and deliberately, reveal these other layers of emotional intelligence to her character. I'd say maybe it's something about being an actress in LA that can jade you, but it's surprisingly hard to find. Actresses in this age range who are as cheery as Aisling is naturally, which is funny because if you are familiar with her prior work, she normally plays extremely dark, tragic, and tortured characters. So she was so excited to smile in a movie. And credit to her, because I think it is such a balancing act to maintain that sense of bright-eyed optimism without feeling like a caricature, but also having to hold. My favorite parts of Marcy are she knows who she is. She just sees the best in people. That's a choice. I think sometimes we can underestimate people who are optimistic or we perceive as being overly empathetic, and we can assume that they're not that bright. I think particularly women, if I'm being honest. So it was important for me that Marcy had even though she is forgiving and will, overlook some of the asides that Dennis makes, that she still holds her boundaries and she has a clear sense of character and what she believes is right and wrong.
The thing that I really loved about Marcy is that Marcy was the anchor for the two of you. She was the reason that the two of you got back together ultimately in the film for me. She was the anchor that was like, you miss your best friend, you were wrong, but maybe, this could kind of work itself out. I loved that character, and I love that you wrote her that way. So kudos to you for creating somebody so full-bodied in terms of a female character, because we don't get to see that often on screen for women. So thank you for that, James. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Speaking of which, you are juggling a lot of hats here, my man. You are writing, you're directing, you're acting, you're casting, you're doing all the things. And since this is film independent and we're talking about indie film, how do you juggle all of those things while trying to bring in a film on budget?
You're speaking my trauma. I often get asked what's the most difficult part of writing, directing, and acting, but for me it is genuinely the producing, because it was just David Parman and I as the producers. Normally if you look at credits of a film that premieres at Sundance, there's a long list of producers. It was just David and I and our director of development, Alex. So it was a small team, and I had a lot more. And I also produced my first film, so I thought I was, but this was such a larger scale, dealing with all the unions, DGA, WGA, Teamsters, IATSE, and so that was a large learning curve for me. The financing of this film was such that it was challenging because we didn't have enough resources, but very beneficial because I retained final cut and we got to make the exact unbridled version of the film that we wanted to create, which, as we all know, is extremely rare in this industry. So we're absolutely eternally grateful for that, but at the same time, the loan is literally in my name, and I felt the pressure of having to deliver this film on time and on budget, and I'd say it's being a producer that's the most at war with the creative, because as a director and a performer, you're advocating for a creative process and the time to get things right, but as a producer, you're like, well, hurry the fuck up. and wrap this. So those were, and Dylan can attest, the parts that weighed on me the most, and where I really leaned on him. This was his first time executive producing a film, and he brought so much experience. There were times, I'm thinking about day 2 of filming, which is we did a split shoot where we structured. We filmed all of Rocky scenes first, and then we came back after the holidays and filmed out the rest of principal photography, so Dylan could not only have a physical transformation, but also just focus on the characters emotionally. So we're starting off hot with day 1's car crash, day 2 sex scene, and under the covers. We knew that scene under the covers was so pivotal to understanding why Dennis was so invested into this relationship that would have a snowball effect for the whole rest of the movie. And we were literally rewriting during the lunch break, which is not my preferred way to be writing that last minute, but we also were greenlit 2 weeks before the WGA strike. So, we kind of rushed into production as soon as the strike's resolved. And there was a moment where I'm like, okay, we just got to start filming. And Dylan was so thoughtful to be like, no, they can wait and we can rehearse this. And that's what we need. And that felt like such a luxury at the time, to be able to ask for something that prioritizes process. And in retrospect, now I realize, well, that is what independent film means to me. It's finding ways that center what we're really trying to do, which is to capture lightning on screen. I mean, we spend so much time, so much money, in my case, a decade of blood, sweat, and tears to get something made. And if you don't treat it as carefully as you can, obviously it's a challenge, and you have to make compromises, and that's just the nature of art meets commerce. I am so grateful to our whole crew and cast, but especially Dylan, for making this experience magical. And I think that really lent itself to what we captured on camera.
It was a magical experience for us that watched it too, just so you know. You're 35, and I cannot wait to see what else you come up with, because your voice in cinema is so fresh and so unique and so palpable that I know whatever you do after Twinless is going to be amazing. And I've already given you your flowers, so you don't need any more. But I wanted to say that before we close it out. And let's thank both James Sweeney and Dylan O'Brien for this Q&A for Film Independent. And thank you all for staying and watching and listening. It drops nationwide on September 5th. Tell all your friends, because it can't be a success unless people know about it. All right? All right.